Hello and welcome to Gnome Studios, where I draw and talk about art and animation and various other topics. In today's video, I am going to be showing you guys how I study anatomy and poses from references. Now, to begin any piece, I think you need to start with three things: your head, your torso, and your line of action. Whichever order you do this in, I don't think matters so much. It depends on personal preference, but I think those three need to be placed in first before moving on to any form of details with your poses. And the pelvis as well. You can include the pelvis whenever, but I think the rib cage of the torso is the most important part to place in first, and then your pelvis will follow soon after. By the way, the line of action, in case anyone doesn't know, is just going to indicate the curve of the pose. So it's going to follow the main curve of the body. It is typically either a C curve or an S curve, depending on your pose and reference. And next, what I like to do is do the rib cage. The rib cage and the torso, I like to call a bean shape. I used to just draw a whole bean for it, but then I started doing this technique where I will draw the rib cage and the pelvis a bit more separate and then connect them into a bean a little later. But yeah, the body is bean shaped, in case anyone's wondering. So yeah, after drawing the rib cage, which I also like to indicate where the rib cage is facing through carving out the center hole, crevasse. What is it called? Essentially where the ribs are going to curve up and meet the sternum. I like to indicate that with a simple curved line to show where the body, the upper part of the body, is facing. And then the pelvis is just an upside down dome or a wedge shape drawn beneath, a little bit beneath the torso. When drawing the arms and legs, I like to start off by just doing a simple line with a couple of circles to indicate the joints. So I'll have a circle for the shoulder and a circle for the elbow, and sometimes a circle for the wrist and the ankle, depending on if it needs it. Once those are in place to show where the arms and the legs are going to be placed, then I draw cylinders to indicate the volume and the form of the arms. It's just very simple, just a simple cylinder shape, and I like to cut the cylinder with a circle through it to show if the arm is facing towards or away from the camera, and essentially how foreshortened it is going to be. Once I am done building out the main structure of the body, I will then go in and draw the more detailed muscle structures that are on top of this base form. And I'm going to use the reference heavily for this to see exactly the exact size and shape of the muscles on this particular reference. This part is definitely my favorite. It's just when the whole pose comes together and you can finally see, like, oh yeah, this is looking like a human and not like one of those stupid little wooden dolls that you see a lot of artists use, which those aren't really the best for posing, I've heard. There are some better posable puppets out there that you can use besides those little wooden ones. They don't really have the exact mobility that a human has. But they're a good starting point. I just don't think they're the best if you really want a solid reference. If you want a solid reference, Real Humans is the way to go, in my opinion. Having a friend pose for you, or just finding a reference online, or even posing for yourself. I've done that before, where I have had to take pictures or videos of myself doing the pose or motion that I needed to reference. And because of that, oftentimes a lot of my characters ended up looking very short because I only had my own self as reference, and I am very short. Like really, like shorter than you'd expect. A lot of people keep telling me, like, "Wait, you're 4'9"? I thought you were 4'11". I don't know why that is. Why does everyone automatically assume I'm 4'11" just because I'm short? I can be shorter than that. I can go shorter if you want me to. I need to stop ranting about how short I am. It's getting out of hand. Anyway, back to the drawing. So, oh, you can see me drawing the hands here. Yeah, I don't know why, but I always tend to draw in the hands a little bit smaller than they actually should be. Maybe it's because I also use my own hands for reference and they're small comparative to other people because I am small. I really need to stop ranting about my height. This is getting out of hand. Anyway, back to the drawing. Here I am trying to draw a sword. So that technique you saw me use a second ago, I was holding down the shift key. I would tap my pen at the starting point of where I wanted my line to be, and then I would hold down shift, and it will show a guide of where your line is going to end up, and then you tap again, and it will draw a perfectly straight line at any angle for you. My issue with this one was I could have just made my brush smaller, but it doesn't have any line weight variation, and I don't know, I don't really like that look. I could have done a really, really thin line and then maybe drawn over it to add thickness where I wanted it to, but I decided to freehand these lines in because I'm crazy. And now here's another fun part of this process. I take this big fluffy graphite brush, I think, and I'm just going to quickly brush in some of the base shadows on my drawing. Again, using the reference as a guide, I'm going to see where are the darkest shadows sitting on this body, and I'm just going to lightly shade in those areas just to help indicate where the forms of this body and reference are located. And it's going to add a lot of good three-dimensionality to your little sketch. For this shading process, I did a very rough pass. Not too much blending. I think I only blended a little bit around some of the more rounder objects like the boobs. Always have to shade the boobs nicely. And then what I did was I actually darkened my base canvas to a mid to light gray tone so that I can draw in whites for highlights instead of, having to shade in the entire form in order to indicate highlights. I decided to make the whole canvas a darker tone. And then I just used a white and I lightly highlighted the areas that I wanted to have highlighted. Now, moving on to this reference I found of a man. This reference, I really love the pose. But yeah, it is a little bit harder to see exactly what's going on because the forearms are hidden behind the upper body, and one of the legs is completely missing. Yeah, you saw me right in there. Where the other leg? I could not see it. So I'm like, okay, so we don't have to indicate that because I am following the reference. I can probably presume that the leg is hidden behind the other one, facing farther away from the camera. So it would not be visible at this angle. Well, I mean, it isn't visible at this angle because it's not in the reference. But I still follow the same techniques I used in drawing the other pose, just the body is going to be a little bit more squished down and kneeling over. Oh, here you see me do an interesting technique where I draw a triangle shape to indicate where the head is in relation to the points of contact that the body has with the ground or the surface underneath it. This just helped me figure out my relationships between the body. And I saw that the shoulder was going out a little too far. The head was a little bit too in line with the knee. The knee goes out much farther than the head. I did a quick draw over of the reference just to see where the points of contact are in relation to the head, drawing that triangle. Triangles are very important, by the way, in composition, in poses, and anatomy. Triangles are my favorite shape. They're everywhere. They're so important, and they're fantastic. So anyway, then I just copied that same triangle onto my sketch, and I liquefied a bit where I saw that the body needed a little bit of adjusting. But yeah, the process for this pose is largely the same. The line of action here is much more of a C curve than an S curve like the other one had, because the body is hunched over into a C shape. But yeah, I drew all the pieces of the body along this line of action. And the spine here is a lot more clear because we're facing the character's back. So I was able to see the spine and I followed the line of action along that curve. And then, of course, the limbs are much more foreshortened. So the cylinders are facing a little bit more away from the camera in this pose. Specifically the arms. The arms are very foreshortened. They're, moving forward in space in front of the character's body. So they are going to taper a lot more away from the camera. I had a bit of a struggle when I was drawing the back muscles, deciding how much detail I wanted to include. The back muscles on this reference are very prominent. They are very, very strong and they pop out a lot. So there's a lot of lines going on, and I didn't want the pose to look too, the drawing itself to look too crowded. But I also really did want to indicate all of those muscle groups, especially since I don't draw back muscles that often, and I think they're really fun to study. So I did want to sort of play around with those forms and study them and figure them out. Also, I there was a you could see a bit of the lines, I think, of the ribs, along some of the underneath some of the muscles in the reference, and I was struggling to figure out like, ooh, do I want to include them? I really did want to include those lines, but every time I did, it just kind of looked a little off in the drawing. So I decided that was a detail that could have been omitted. But I did keep in most of the main muscle shapes and indents we see on the back, and I think it looks so cool. Back muscles look so sick, guys. And now I'm going to go in with that same brush that I used before on the other pose, and I'm just going to shade the character where I see fit, which is pretty much everywhere. I shaded a lot of this because I really wanted those back muscles to really pop out in space. And it was really fun, really relaxing to just like follow the reference and kind of turn my brain off here and just, place the shadows where I see them. And yeah, I was really happy with how both of these sketches turned out. I thought they looked pretty cool. One thing that I really want to do this coming summer is study all the names of the muscles. I think that would be a really fun challenge. Um, yeah, and just like study all the names and of course drawing them on their own and then also placing them within the body and learning how they all move and function together. I think is going to be a really beneficial skill to have as an artist. I already know quite a few muscle names. I really enjoyed my anatomy and physiology class I took in high school, and I do have all the bones memorized. That is something I do have, all the bones. Have I drawn all of them? Not quite. I think I've drawn quite a few of them. I do want to go through and actually study also how to draw all the bones. But yeah, mainly I want to learn all the muscle names. I think it's going to take some time, but I think it's going to be really fun. And I was thinking once I do that, maybe I'll make a YouTube video ranking all of the bones and muscles in the body based on how aesthetically pleasing they are or how much I like to draw them. I don't know. If you're interested in seeing something like that, please let me know in the comments down below, and I will make sure I make that video in the coming months. But yeah, that is going to be all for today as I draw in this one last sword in the sketch. So yeah, if you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment down below of anything else you'd like to see me draw in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.